Welcome, America and points beyond. This is the Daily Answer. Your host, Mark Dunagan. Today, I want to deal with a chapter in Acts chapter 16, a section of Scripture. And the title for this podcast will be, Would Someone Just Come Over and Help Us? In Acts chapter 16, Paul, having started his second journey, has picked up Timothy, and they are out strengthening the churches in verse 5. That's an important thing to do. It's an important thing to be aware of. How are the local congregations doing in your area? I know each congregation is autonomous, independent, governed by its own elders, and the elders have no authority beyond that congregation. 1 Peter chapter 5, 1 through 3 makes that very clear. But do you ever go and visit? Do you go to any gospel meetings in the area? Do you know how the churches in your area, that is in the area within like driving distance from you, how are those churches faring? Do they need any fill-in preaching? Could they use anyone to come and encourage them or lead singing from time to time? It's a good idea to kind of keep an eye on how are my brethren doing in the local area. Now, as we read a little bit further, Paul attempted to go into a couple of areas, but the Holy Spirit did not allow him. And one text says that the Spirit of Jesus did not permit them. We also learn, though, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 and in verse 18, that Paul says there concerning various travel plans or plans that he had wanted to complete, that Satan hindered him. Satan's real. Satan's out there. It's easy to forget about Satan. When's the last time you thought about Satan? Don't underestimate him. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. He's a roaring lion, prowling about, restless, and seeking someone to devour. He's real. Yet God is working behind the scenes as well. God knows who you are. God knows that you have the truth if you're a Christian and who's looking. Recently, that came home to me. My wife and I had gotten up early in the morning. We're about 2 hours from Portland. We drove into a doctor's appointment at 8:30, and they had canceled that appointment. Well, that's not going to work. Okay. And the fortunate thing is my doctor was kind enough to say, well, I wouldn't want my appointment canceled either if I've, made a 2-hour drive. And so instead of 8:30, it's going to be 11:30. Well, that means we have some time to kill. And we go to the grocery store, pick up some things for Cindy's beef stew that she makes about every 6 months that we take with us, and went over to Costco, came back. We're in the parking lot of the doctor's office, and it's about 11 o'clock. And my wife looks up as she's working on her laptop and sees this individual walk by, and she says, "Oh, now I know why we're here." You see, if my appointment would have gone as scheduled, I would have missed that individual. And that individual was a man who had come to a number of our meetups in the past, the Bible studies that we had had when I was in the Beaverton area. And it was almost like God saying, "Mark, I'm sorry to kind of run you around, but if your appointment had gone as scheduled at 8:30, you would have been gone by the time this man had been here and walked in front of your vehicle, but you and your vehicle would not be there." And so here you are at 11 o'clock because that's when he was going to be there. And I was able to go out and engage him in conversation and hand me one of my cards and see what I could do to have an influence upon this individual. God has my back. And I'll be very, very careful when it's like, oh, why can't I make better time today? The traffic is bad, or my schedule's not coming together, or there are a number of interruptions. God knows who you are, and God knows who's looking. So don't have your head down. Don't get all frustrated. Sometimes there's a very good reason why you are there at that time and not at another time. God is helping me to be fruitful, and God is helping me to use my talents. A man from Macedonia appears to Paul in a vision, and he tells him, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." And Paul immediately concludes, I think as most of us would conclude, That's where God wanted him. And so he goes there. Yet when Paul arrives, there's not a big crowd of people saying, "Yay, Paul, we've been waiting for you," and all these, banners and a band and etc. There's really no one to greet him when he shows up in Macedonia at the dock. And in Philippi, there's no synagogue there. Actually, there's just a handful of women that are gathered together at a place of prayer and persecution and opposition. What's your interpretation of an opportunity? Is it everything goes smooth, no hitches, no hindrances, instant appreciation? I think sometimes, and I can identify with this, I would love it if my neighbor or neighbors would show up on my doorstep with a platter of cookies. And as I open it up, they would have a big smile on their face along with the cookies or brownies and say, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Yes, I would love that. That would be great. But the reality is, that's not the way it was here in Philippi for Paul. He shows up, no one's at the dock, needs to find, well, there's some women down at a place of prayer, we'll preach to them. Are we expecting some big reception committee, or are we expecting applause? We need to realize that, as Paul noted in 1 Corinthians chapter 16 and verse 9, he said, there is a wide door. There was an open and effective door for service and many adversaries. Opportunities come with adversaries. Opportunities come with hindrances and things not going on schedule and etc. And so don't start something and maybe it just kind of not quite gel and say, well, maybe it wasn't the right time for that. No, it's always the right time to speak the gospel. It's always a right time to do the wrong thing. The right thing. It's never a right time to do the wrong thing. And the other thing is, how do you view discouraging news? Like the nightly news. Now, I must admit that I'm somewhat out of the loop. I tune in a little bit as far as on the news feed, what's going on, but I realize that the news, negative, bad stuff sells. They're not going to talk about, how many planes landed safely today? You know how many people got in their car? You know how many automobile accidents there were not? You know how many people arrived safely at home? You know how many people today did not get cancer, etc. Do you know how many forests did not burn up today? Now, that's not going to be news. But let's not get discouraged by the news. Do you really want the world ignoring God and doing great? I don't. That would not be good for the world. Actually, the news is often the predictable outcome of the latest social experiment. Often that's what the news is. James chapter 3 points out the wisdom from below, the earthly wisdom, where there's jealousy and selfish ambition. He says there's disorder and every evil thing. That's a good way of summing up the nightly news at times. Disorder, every evil thing. Actually, the news proves. Every day the nightly news or the 24/7 news proves the injunction of Jeremiah 10:23. I know, O Lord, it is not in man, it's not within man who walks to direct his own steps. On our own, we become a mess. On our own, we create huge problems. When we don't listen to God's wisdom, well, that's what you're seeing on the nightly news. We turn away from God, we get addiction, we get crime, we get dishonesty, we get corruption, we get war, we get mismanagement, etc. That's what we get when we turn away from God. We get hopelessness, we get despair. Yep, that's what happens when people turn away from God. Read Romans 1:18 through 32 sometime and see what happens when the people there said, I don't want to have spiritual things in my head. I don't want to have God in my head. I don't want to be thinking about things like that. I want to be my own man and independent of God. Okay, all right. And you end up where people are not trustworthy. and they're disobedient to parents, and you have a complete breakdown of society. That's what you have in Romans chapter 1. But what would be another way of viewing the news if you would put like a caption on the news or a subtitle? Well, could it be, and they're sheep without a shepherd? That would be a good one. How about we are flying blind? How about Judges 21:21, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes? Or Jeremiah 23, it's not within man who walks to direct his steps. How about Proverbs 16:25? There's a way that seems right to a man, but the end is death. Or how about Acts chapter 16? Is it the nightly news, the human race actually crying out what the man in Macedonia in that vision said? Would someone come here over here and help us? Christian, are you hearing that? Are you hearing that in the lives of your neighbors? Maybe they're not saying that, but are you hearing that in their lives? Are you seeing that in the lives of unbelievers? Are you seeing it in the lives of our leaders where it's like, would someone just come here and help me because I don't know what I'm doing? Outside of Christ, you just don't know what you're doing. Are we hearing that? Because we have the answer. Now, when I look at Lydia, I'm very impressed by Lydia. Lydia could have done a lot of things that morning. It's just a place of prayer. It's a handful of women. Do I really need to go? Is it really that important? Am I going to learn anything? Maybe, maybe next week. Because she was a businesswoman, she had irons in the fire. Again, it was not the most encouraging situation, a small group. Yet she kept herself in the game. And what do I mean by that? Well, if Lydia doesn't show up, she's not there to hear Paul preach. She's not convicted, and she doesn't become a Christian. Heads up, everyone. Paul did not come through Philippi like every year of his life. Okay. And also, Jesus did not come to Jericho all the time. When Jesus came through Jericho in Luke 19 and Zacchaeus got up in the sycamore tree and Jesus saw him and said, you got to come down here. I'm having lunch at your house today. That's the last time he would go through Jericho. Don't think, I'll have another chance. I'll have another opportunity. Things aren't quite right now. They seem kind of busy. I would say something or ask a question, but there will always be another time. Oh no. No, there's not always another time. Some opportunities only come once. I remember when I heard the gospel. Okay, so I knew what I needed to be saved, but had not done it yet. And part of me said, and I was about 20, part of me said, well, you're 20 and still young. Mark, why don't you just keep on living the way you want to and sinning and getting drunk and running around? And then when you're 60, like really old and you don't want to have any fun anymore, well, then become a Christian and it will be easy because you won't want to have any fun anymore. Okay, well that's pretty dumb, right? But another part of me said, no, Mark, if you don't do it now, you never will. Because every day in your life that goes by that you get used to being lost, you will lose the urgency to become a Christian. And eventually, it just won't matter anymore. And if you live to be 60, yeah, good luck on that one if you're drinking every day and living it up. If you actually succeed in living to 60, you may not be able to pull yourself out of that pit. Not only that, but at 60, you're still going to want to have fun. And if you haven't got your appetites under control by them, you're often doomed. You're calloused. You're set in your ways. You've made up your mind. You have been consumed and devoured by the devil. So she kept herself in the game. She would be there when the Apostle Paul showed up, and she didn't know that. She would listen intently. The word would open her heart, and she would be baptized in her household. And that made all the difference. Oh, friend, be so very careful about thinking, I'm kind of tired. It's a Wednesday night service. I've already been once. It really doesn't matter if I'm there tonight. It's, it's a Sunday night. It's a Wednesday night. They're having a men's class. They're having a gospel meeting. I'm kind of tired. There will always be another time. Who did you not meet that you were supposed to meet that night? Don't assume that there's not a job for you to do at that gospel meeting, that there's not someone that you're supposed to meet and encourage or be encouraged. Never take for granted the assemblies. Never take for granted opportunities to learn about God. Man, I've seen that so many times in my life. I was kind of tired, and maybe we made we said, well, we still need to go. And maybe it was a last minute decision to go to a particular group in Florida. And there I met the person I was supposed to meet. But it'd been so easy just to pass on it. Been a busy day, tired, etc. No. Keep yourself in the game, particularly young people. If you're single, keep yourself in the game, because that Wednesday night or Sunday night or whatever, that gospel meeting that you could have been to and you were not, maybe the person that you were supposed to meet, your lifetime partner, they were there, but you were not there. Can't blame that. Can't blame that on circumstances. That's on you. That's on you. Her heart was open because she was listening with attention. Luke 18:18, Jesus said, take care how you listen. Oh, don't read the Bible and cross your arms and kind of bow your back and said, I don't know about that. Who are you? You're not God. You're not omniscient. Accept it. Really listening. In Luke 13:18, it says that when the seed is sown, the devil is there to snatch away the word from those that do not understand, or those that do not pay attention or take it seriously. The devil fears the message, because if someone continues to listen to the gospel message, they're going to be changed and he's going to lose them. That's how powerful the message is. Be very careful. The gospel, no one wants the gospel anymore. Well, then why is the devil there trying to distract people? He knows it's powerful. He respects its power. He takes it seriously. So be seriously listen. Be willing to entertain new thoughts. Have an open heart. Thoughts that challenge you. Thoughts that you might disagree with, that go against your preconceived ideas. Have the word open. See whether those things are so. Acts 17:11. Have a love for the truth. Be open to the truth. Whatever it takes, side with the truth. Let that be your only loyalty. A love for God and a love for his truth. Yeah, she's a successful businesswoman, Lydia. She had servants, but she was smart enough to realize that apart from God, her successful life could fall apart easily. Be careful, be very careful about thinking that what has made you successful in a secular world will enable you to handle any situation. Read a story about a park ranger, one of those park rangers that they drop off in a helicopter way out in the boonies and keeps track of hikers and dismantles illegal campsites and has one batch of food, and he doesn't get resupplied for the whole summer. He could take care of himself. He knew the woods. He was an expert. Out there. But then he committed adultery. He cheated on his wife. Temptation hit him. And he was all the skills that he had for surviving in the woods. Guess what? All those skills were completely useless when it came to the temptation of another woman. And when it came to trying to put his marriage back together, those were all useless skills at that point. You're going to need God. Don't underestimate that. There are things that are going to come up and hit you. Maybe they've already done so, hit you hard. And all your secular skills are pretty much going to be useless when that happens. You're going to need a real foundation. You're going to need to have your life built upon the rock of Jesus Christ. Matthew chapter 7, verses 21 through 23 and following. Well, this is Mark Dunagan for the Daily Answer. And until next time, we'll see you in the funny papers.